Okay, welcome back to part 2 of the notes. Go ahead and write apple pie up next to Algebra 1 at the top of the page, and we'll get started. What 7 and 8 are asking us to do is to write an equation in slope-intercept form. So slope-intercept form, that's the y equals mx plus b, and they've given us a point, and they've given us another equation. So the other equation is the equation it's going to be parallel to. So parallel means the same slope. So we know that our new line is going to have a slope of 1/3, and it has the point of 3, -1. So we can go ahead and write it in point slope form. That'll get us started. So y minus -1, which is the same as +1, equals 1/3 x minus 3. And then we have to solve this for y to get it into slope-intercept form. So to do that, I'm going to distribute my 1/3. So I've got 1/3 x minus 1 equals y plus 1. And I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. And my answer is y equals 1/3 x minus 2. And that's my answer. Okay, so on number 8, they haven't given us an equation in slope-intercept form, so they haven't given us the slope. We'll have to solve the first equation for y to get our slope. Then we'll have to take that slope and the point, put it in point slope form, and solve our new equation for y in order to get the answer. So I want you to do that on your own. Pause the video, work your way through all the process, and then check back to check your answer. Okay, when you solved the equation 2x plus y equals 1, you came out with a slope of -2. And using that with a point to plug into the point slope formula, and then finally solving that down to y equals -2x. Okay, on number 9 and 10, we're doing the same process, except this time, instead of using a parallel slope, we're going to be using a perpendicular slope. So when you look at number 9, let's go back over to it. When we look at number 9, they've given us an equation with a slope of +2/3. If we want to write the parallel, or the perpendicular slope to it, we're going to say a perpendicular slope would be opposite sign, so a negative sign. Let's try that again, a negative sign, and then we're going to flip it upside down, so -3/2. So now that I've given you the perpendicular slope and you've got a point, go ahead and write your point slope equation and then solve that equation into the slope-intercept equation. So pause your video, do all that work, and then check back for the explanation. Working through each of the steps, this is a very straightforward equation or question. Okay, looking at number 10. On number 10, first thing you're going to have to do before you can find the perpendicular slope is you're going to have to find the original slope. So go ahead and solve the equation for y, find the perpendicular slope, and work through the process. Pause your video and then check back for the explanation. Probably the most challenging part of number 10 is remembering how to add fractions. When you add 3/2 and you add a 1 to it, you have to convert the 1 into a common denominator of 2, and all of that is shown out in the explanation. Okay, so in the next section, we are going to be looking at the slope of our x and our y axis. So if we think about it, if you're looking at a graph, I'm going to just draw a quick little graph up here for you. If we're looking at a graph, we have our x-axis and our y-axis. So when it says what is a slope of a line parallel to the x-axis, So we're looking at the x-axis right here. Well, the slope of the x-axis, the slope of that thing is a 0. So a line parallel to it is going to have a slope of 0. And then when we look at the y-axis, the slope of our y-axis is undefined. It's not a function. It's a vertical line. We call that undefined. So undefined. Okay, so now that we know that the slope of the x-axis is 0 and the y-axis is undefined, now let's talk about perpendicular. Well, if you think about it, our axes are perpendicular. The y-axis is perpendicular to the x and vice versa. So when I ask what is perpendicular to the x-axis, well, the y-axis is perpendicular to the x-axis, and we already know that the slope of the y-axis is undefined. And in like manner, perpendicular to the y-axis, perpendicular to y is our x-axis, and we know that our x-axis is a 0 slope. Okay, so they're going to use that information and just kind of expect that you understand it. So look at number 11 and think about what it's saying. It's wanting to know the equation of a line parallel to x equals 5. Well, first thing we have to think about is the equation x equals 5. X equals 5 is a vertical line. It means it's not a y equals equation, which would be a function. It is an x equals equation, and the only thing that's not a function, an x equals equation, is going to be a vertical line. So we know if we did a table, we've got a vertical line equaling to 5. And what it's asking us to do is to write an equation parallel to it that passes through -1, 2. So if I just kind of look at a graph, I already know that I have a vertical line here at x equals 5. That's x equals 5. And I want to draw a vertical line parallel to it goes through the point -1, 2. So if I want it to go through -1, 2, I'm wanting it to go through this point right here at -1. And if I'm wanting it to be parallel, it's also going to have to be an x equals equation. So what is my x value? My x value is -1. So x equals -1. Okay? In like manner, number 12 is going to ask for the equation of the line perpendicular to x equals -2. So if we're going to perpendicular to x equals, we're going to have a y equals line. So when we look at our ordered pair, what does y equal in my ordered pair? Y equals -3. So my equation is y equals -3. It's going to be perpendicular to x equals -2, and it's going to pass through the point 9, -3. So I think you've already kind of figured it out, but vertical lines are perpendicular to horizontal lines. So on number 13. Number 13 is just going to take you through a real life situation. I want you to read through the whole situation. You'll have to figure out the slope of the shoreline in order to figure out the slope that the helicopter should be coming in at. Pause your video to do all the work and then check back for the explanation. Okay, so I really circled either answer is correct because the question says write an equation that represents the path of the helicopter. Well, the blue equation I've circled here is an equation in point slope form that represents the path of the helicopter, and then I solved it to get the equation in slope intercept form that represents the path of the helicopter. And these are equivalent equations. They're just two different forms of the same equation.